The big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome, I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company on TV and radio with the stories that really matter across the country and indeed around the world. We have plenty coming up this afternoon, from self-shearing sheep to another hero of the skies heading for a return to former glory, and we'll be remembering the late, great Lester Pickett. Also, further ructions in the Tory party. For all of them, I will be asking, is it time simply to put up or shut up? Many of you already seem to think so. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the news. Here's Olivia Guthrie.
Thank you, Alistair. Good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock. Here's the latest in the GB newsroom. Liverpool FC are calling for an investigation after fans with tickets were tear-gassed and denied access to the Champions League final last night. Police here say the violent clashes outside the stadium in Paris were the worst seen at a European football match. UEFA say thousands of fans tried to enter the grounds with fake tickets. Merseyside police, however, say supporters were well behaved. The Reds lost 1-0 to Real Madrid at the Stade de France. President Joe Biden will travel to Texas today to pay his respects to the families of those killed in Tuesday's mass school shooting. 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered by a gunman at Robb Elementary School in the town of Uvalde on Tuesday. It's the third mass shooting in the US in the last few weeks. Vice President Kamala Harris says the country should have the courage to take action.
We are not sitting around waiting to figure out what the solution looks like. You know, we're not looking for a vaccine. We know what works on this. It includes, let's have an assault weapons ban. You know what an assault weapon is? You know how an assault weapon was designed? It was designed for a specific purpose: to kill a lot of human beings quickly.
In Ukraine, a missile strike has destroyed part of a solar power plant as Russia's attacks in the country intensify. CCTV footage captured the moment the bomb hit in the Kharkiv region. Officials say no one was hurt and the power supply has been restored. It comes as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian assaults in the surrounding areas are becoming worse.
The situation is very complicated, especially in those areas in the Donbass and Kharkiv region where the Russian army is trying to squeeze at least some result for themselves. It's indescribably difficult there, and I'm grateful to all those who withstood this onslaught of the occupiers.
Back here, the Labour Party is to push for a vote on the Prime Minister's decision to change the Ministerial Code of Conduct. Critics say Boris Johnson's proposals watered down the rules. But the Cabinet Office says it's disproportionate for ministers to lose their job for what they say are minor breaches. The changes mean they'll instead face a salary suspension or will need to issue a public apology. A major clean-up operation is underway in Devon after a super yacht caught fire and sank. Emergency services are working to prevent oil and fuel spilling further in the marina in Torquay. Firefighters battled the blaze on the 85-foot yacht for hours yesterday before the vessel eventually sank. Thick plumes of black smoke could be seen for miles, with police evacuating a nearby beach and roads. Boris Johnson apparently wants to bring back pounds, ounces, feet and inches. The government's reportedly going to launch a consultation on the use of imperial measurements in Britain to coincide with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The UK has used metric units since 2000 following an EU directive. Traders are currently legally required to use metric measurements for sale by weight or the measure of fresh produce. Well, as the UK prepares to celebrate Her Majesty's Jubilee, the Prime Minister says no monarch has served the country so well. In a personal message to the Queen, Boris Johnson thanked her for her exemplary service, praising the institution of the Crown and the exceptional individual who wears it. The PM also described the Queen as a steadying, guiding force for the nation, adding Her Majesty embodied the very idea of what a constitutional monarchy should be. Tributes have poured in for legendary jockey Alastair Pickett, who has died aged 86. The 11-time champion and winner of 30 classics was widely regarded as one of the greatest riders of all time. Fellow jockey Frankie Dettori said Leicester was a hero of his and the impact he made in racing is second to none. The chief executive of Great British Racing, Rod Street, added Leicester was a true titan of sport, a one-off who transcended horse racing. Mr Pickett's son-in-law and horse trainer William Haggis confirmed his death in Switzerland this morning. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now it's back to Alistair.
Olivia, thank you, and thanks also for the little reminder in your news bulletin there that next weekend is all about the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Indeed, we will be starting our GB News coverage on Thursday. So this last weekend, before the festivities unfold, I thought I would risk taking a rain check on the state of politics. MPs have gone back to their constituencies, not to prepare for government, but to ponder, well, some pretty fundamental stuff in truth. Another handful of Tory MPs have come out to say they want a confidence vote in their leader, the Prime Minister. The Daily Mail on Sunday suggests that some are now actively plotting over dinner to use the unseat the Prime Minister and back Jeremy Hunt. Meanwhile, the Chancellor of the Exchequer says in today's Sun newspaper that he's spending all his time on what else he can do to help us come the autumn budget. Labour continued to celebrate Rishi Sunak's cost of living package, which we discussed yesterday, claiming that their fingerprints are all over it. And on this programme yesterday, the Taxpayers Alliance said that they thought Labour were finally getting it on the economy. Lower taxes are better, leaving all of us to make our own choices. Well, whether they have or not, what is not in doubt is that a row rages within the Conservative Party about what they actually stand for these days on tax, spending and indeed the size of the state. With all of that as a backdrop, along comes Tony Blair and his plan to host a Future of Britain conference with political thinkers, business leaders and those struggling to find a political home. Many say it's not unlike Macron's En Marche movement, which took him to the presidency not once but twice, and, significantly, saw the traditional political parties in France reduced to also-rans in the presidential election earlier this year. So it really genuinely is interesting times, and today I'm talking to an old ally of Boris Johnson's, a biographer of Tony Blair, with his finger firmly on the pulse of all things political, a Labour backbencher and a Conservative backbencher. And as a sort of indicator that something really is shifting in our politics, more and more of us are choosing to use private GPs over the NHS and its waiting lists. Now, that really is a shift. I'll be talking to a senior GP about all of that. But even more significantly than any of that, as always, I genuinely want to hear what you think about Tories turning on Johnson, Labour finding its feet, Tony Blair possibly bouncing back, and talk of a realignment in our politics. Dan Hodges, incidentally, says in the Mail that the Tory rebels should put up or shut up. Now, I'm guessing that that's how a lot of you feel, but I may be wrong. Do let me know directly. Either agree with him or disagree with him and tell me why. Email us on gbviews@gbnews.uk, tweet us or me directly, or go on Facebook. And please don't hold back. and some of you haven't held back already. I tweeted about 20 minutes ago that this is what we were going to be doing today, and I'm going to start off the programme because they are so good with just a little quick selection of 3 of them, responding to a YouGov poll that shows that Labour on 36%, ahead of the Conservatives on 33%. Adrian says the Conservatives have to win a majority at the next election as no one will go into coalition with them, whereas Labour will go into coalition with anyone. Responding to the same poll, Rasmus says, I spent 20 minutes yesterday looking for a list of Labour policies. I found absolutely nothing, and I was actively looking. And Kaz on Twitter, those in the party who want rid of Boris are Remainers. Perhaps it's time that they accepted Brexit and now helped the country move on. So do keep those views coming in, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can catch that fascinating interview from yesterday with the Taxpayers Alliance. Let's get the conversation going now with chief political commentator and good friend of mine and this programme, John Rentoul from The Independent. And John, if we may, let's start with the Tories. I want to talk about Labour and Blair in a moment, but first the Tories and Boris Johnson. His enemies in the party and the media just can't get him at the moment, try as they do. Why is that?
Well, because he's not so obviously a liability to the party that MPs are panicking about holding their seats at the next general election. And the next general election is still nearly 2 years off, probably. So the urgency of action is not great enough for them to tip him out. And the opinion polls are not bad enough. I mean, you were just quoting that the latest, I think it was Opinium today, it was a 3-point Labour lead. That's not the kind of disastrous situation that the party would feel that it has to get rid of its leader. That said, of course, as you know, there are an awful lot of Tory MPs who are unhappy and possibly quite close to triggering the 54 threshold for a vote of confidence in the leader.
Yeah, which takes me to my second question perfectly, because according to the papers today, some of his enemies may or may not hold dinner parties in restaurants above pubs or go around plotting, and some have come out again clearly and said, yes, I've written my letter to Sir Graham Stringer, I definitely want him to go. Is it not time for them to end this poisonous drip feed and either put up or shut up?
Well, it's not up to an individual MP. That's the problem. Actually, I think it's a virtue of the Conservative leadership system. It means that MPs have to write a letter privately to Sir Graham Brady. They don't know what other MPs are doing. I mean, apart from the ones who've gone public. But even then, you can't be absolutely sure that they've done what they've said they will do. And so it really is it's an anonymous beauty contest that is running continuously until it trips.
John, I'm just going to butt in for folk who are listening to our conversation on radio rather than television. We're just looking at Mark Harper, the former chief whip, who from start to finish has been upfront and open and said what he believes. He may disagree with the Prime Minister, but at least he's got the guts to say what he thinks and say it publicly.
Yeah, that's true, but I mean, if everybody said what they thought publicly, then you wouldn't be able to operate a party system at all. And although political parties and whips and all the rest of it are regularly condemned, they are the best way of organising democracy. You have to organise people into groups, and that does involve people not necessarily saying everything that they believe in at once.
Seen over the years, you and I, the drip feed and the impact it can have on various leaders, whether it's Gordon Brown leading the Labour Party or John Major leading the Conservative Party and in office. In your view, bearing that history in mind, how significant are the 2 by-elections in a few weeks' time?
Well, I don't think they are that significant, Alistair, because I think they're already written off. I don't think the Conservatives have a remote chance of holding on to either of them. I think the Wakefield one might be more significant because that is a Labour-Tory marginal. Now, obviously, we're back to the old sort of pre-coalition situation where you would expect the Lib Dems to win a by-election from the government at almost any time. But when you start losing seats to the main opposition party, that's more serious. And if Labour win Wakefield handsomely, I think that will start to worry Tory MPs. But I may be completely wrong about that. I thought the Sue Gray report wouldn't actually have much effect when it was published, but it does seem to have had quite a dramatic effect in firming up a lot of Tory MPs in their conviction that Boris Johnson has to go.
Yeah, I'm also picking up, interesting, and Olivia mentioned it in her news bulletin just now, that there's quite a lot of negative reaction amongst Tory MPs, not so much to the Gray report, but to the Prime Minister's acceptance of a new set of rules for the Ministerial Code. Not his work, not his ideas, but put to him that he accepted. Many I'm hearing saying he should have had the wit to say, no, now is not the time, we'll come back to that. What's your view?
Well, I think my view is a lot of people haven't actually read the redrafted Ministerial Code. It isn't an attempt by the Prime Minister to rewrite the rules to save his skin, because the rules on misleading Parliament haven't been changed. And the assumption remains that if Boris Johnson is found to have misled Parliament, he must offer his resignation to the Queen. But I don't think he will be found to have misled Parliament, because the committee that is inquiring into that has a Conservative majority and has to put its findings to the whole House, where the government has a majority of 75. I think if Boris Johnson is going to become a cropper, it's going to be an internal Conservative Party process.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Let's talk briefly about the Labour Party and then finally Tony Blair. On this programme yesterday, the Taxpayers Alliance... Taxpayers Alliance said that that Labour were finally getting it on low tax, and that Rachel Reeves had performed quite well in the Sunak statement, and that could really quite significantly shift the position. But you were tweeting last night about Sir Keir Starmer's Fabian pamphlet, and now another piece of writing promise. I mean, he really has got to get his skates on, hasn't he?
Yes, I think he has. I mean, I did note that that comment you read out from Rasmus, who spent 20 minutes on the internet looking for Labour policies, and now that the Conservatives have stolen the only one that anyone's ever heard of, which is the windfall tax to help pay for people's energy bills. It is true that it is quite difficult to find distinctive Labour policies. I think there's some massive thing called the Green, what do they call it? The Green New Deal or something. But that is waffle and aspiration. No, I think that is right, and I think the Taxpayers Alliance is being slightly mischievous in winding up the Conservative Party, teasing them with having put up taxes. I mean, I don't think anybody seriously thinks that a Labour government would be significantly cutting taxes, because that's not what Labour governments do. They might spend public money more wisely.
Final point, is that precisely the vacuum that Tony Blair sees, an absence of policy, by holding this Future of Britain conference? But it could be like Marché, it could be Macron, it could bring the guy that you've written about with such erudition back into the frame.
Well, he's always wanted to contribute to the public debate in this country, and this is his latest initiative. It looks like giving a platform for a lot of One Nation Remainerish Tories like Ruth Davidson and Rory Stewart, who are good talented people and ought to have some role in public life. So I think that is a good thing, but there is a danger that it'll be seen as a sort of assembly of the embittered Remainers.
John, always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. And you're welcome any time on the programme. For the time being, have a terrific Sunday afternoon. And thank you once again. John Rentoul there, the chief political commentator of The Eye. And listening to that here in the studio, I'm delighted to say, is another good friend of mine who's been on the programme several times, the CEO of the Conservative Friends of the Commonwealth, Sunil Sharma, who knows Boris Johnson very well and works on a range of organisations within the party. I'm going to put to you the first question that was in the middle of that conversation with John Rentoul, all of which you heard. It's a drip feed. People can hide behind the secrecy of writing letters to Sir Graham Brady. They don't have to have the guts and confidence of someone like Mark Harper. In your view, as a Conservative, is it not time, however, that they went public, put up or shut up?
For sure. I think I completely agree with Dan Hodges on that.
John Rentoul. You're quoting the Dan Hodges, because he says it in the Mail on Sunday as well. I beg your pardon.
I completely agree with his article, to be honest. I think it's carried on for a significant amount of time now. I think we've just got to move on. I think, you've got the election in 2 years. If there's an issue with him as leader, I think they'll that opportunity to oust him. The elections, we just saw the local elections recently. Although the results were not good for the Tories, I don't think they were nowhere near as bad as a lot of people expected. And I think when you've got, we're listening to a news bulletin about what's happening in Ukraine, you've got stuff like, Ukraine and Russia war, you've got kids having to hide in underground shelters. And I think there's a lot bigger things going on. I think we should be talking about Rishi Sunak's, I saw it yesterday, we're talking about, the things he's doing for the cost of living crisis. These are things I think that a lot of these Conservative MPs need to start to really rally behind and come up with some ideas. And because at the moment, like we've talked about, it seems as if it's almost quite a left or quite a Labour-like shift we're seeing. So I'd rather see them debate
two other
that.
crucial bits. You've been kind enough to echo. I spotted the Dan Hodges bit as well and mentioned it in my introduction because I think it is a very important essay. There's also a piece written by the Chancellor of the Exchequer himself in the Sun newspaper, very widely read newspaper, and also Dan Hannan, who used to be a Conservative member of the European Parliament, on the theme of tax. Dan says the Tories have lost their way completely. They've forgotten it. And as I said said earlier on, that the Taxpayers Alliance were here, said to John Rentoul, saying that Labour now get low taxes. They do understand it, although he was saying Labour wouldn't be cutting taxes. But Sunak says he will strain every sinew to help us to the maximum come the autumn budget. I mean, that surely is the mixture of the way forward for your party, i.e. a little silence from self-indulgent MPs and a clear tax-cutting, state-shrinking, spending-reducing budget.
Definitely. I think that's where we need to move.
Is that the common view within the party, in your experience?
Yeah, for sure. I think that is the common view. That you raised a really good point. What is the Conservative Party now? Like, what does it stand for in 2022? It's very hard. We've had COVID for the last 2 years where, we've been almost, if you like, it's been OK to abandon all the typical Conservative principles, becoming a bigger government as opposed to small government, which is what we tend to prefer. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened in the last 2 years where we've been happy, if you like, to sort of say, this is a unique circumstance. It doesn't necessarily feel good about it, but we can kind of understand and appreciate. But now we're moving post-lockdown world, post-COVID world. There is the big question, what does the Conservative Party stand for? I think the electorate, people want to know, like, what exactly is what the next 2 years are going to look like. I think these are really big questions, and I think they'll have a much bigger impact on Boris's future and how well they do, as opposed to Partygate, the cake. I think a lot of people are, quite sick and tired of it. I think when you see stuff like house bills gone up by 19% since April 2021, you see cost of living, inflation highest since 1982. I think these are serious issues that hit people at home. And I think people want answers and they want to know how they're going to come out of this. That's a fundamental debate within the Conservative Party, and I agree profoundly. I've said it so many times on this programme, almost to the danger of boring people, but it has got to be resolved. And I mentioned to John Rentoul there that kind of debate is going on within Labour, unresolved on a whole range of issues. And along comes Blair. I don't know if you noticed, but Rentoul mentioned in passing Ruth Davidson, that Blair might be talking about the sort of stuff that Ruth Davidson, former leader of the Conservative Party in Scotland, now takes the Tory whip in the House of Lords, might be interested. There is something quite profound going on that those boat-rocking Tory MPs are allowing and even encouraging. I think, for the record, I think whenever Tony Blair speaks, it's worth listening to. I agree with that. I think his reputation time is probably up. I don't think people are necessarily he's going to ever become a prime minister. And that said, I think sometimes he doesn't necessarily get the respect he deserves, often from his own party. He did win 3 elections in a row. And so whenever he speaks, it's always worth listening to. And I think it'll be interesting to see what he's saying, because there is a bit of a void. Would you go to that conference? I wouldn't go to the conference, but I'd definitely listen to it. I'd definitely read about it. I'd definitely have an idea. But because at the end of the day, I think there is a bit of a identity crisis in probably Labour and the Conservative Party. I think we're not too... I think Conservatives... I think we are moving in the right direction, and I think as soon as Partygate and all this sort of stuff we can move past, I think we'll see it there. But it's always worth... I think he's a person worth listening to, as much as I think his time in the public eye is over, and I don't think, he can ever really do something again in terms of public office. When it comes to policy, when it comes to this sort of thing, I think he's always worth listening to. Always worth listening to, as indeed are you, Sunil Sharma. It's always a pleasure to have you on the programme. Thank you. Welcome any time. Thank you. Have a great Sunday afternoon, and thank you.
You are watching and listening to Alastair Stewart, and indeed, my friends. Now, coming up, the legendary champion jockey and 9-time Derby winner, Alastair Pickett, has died at the age of 86. We'll be speaking to someone who knew him well right after this. But first, let's bring you up to date with the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry with sunny spells for most, though there'll be a cool breeze. Let's take a look at those details. The sunshine will continue this evening in the southwest, where it's been dry and bright today, though out of the sun it will start to feel a bit fresher this evening. In the southeast of England, skies will be a little cloudier, and there's a risk of a light shower for a few of us here. And in South Wales, a dry and largely clear evening with some late sunshine on the cards, feeling cool out of the sun. It's looking a little cloudier in the Midlands than it has been this afternoon. A slight risk of the odd shower, however, these are most likely close to the Peak District. In the north and east of England, an onshore breeze will bring a cool feel this evening, though for most of us here, it will be dry. In southern Scotland, the weather will remain similar to the afternoon. There'll be a cool breeze in eastern areas, warmer in the west, especially in any sheltered sunshine. Northern Ireland can expect a fine end to the day, dry with clear spells, though, as with other areas, once the sun goes down, you'll need an extra layer. A mostly dry night, but by Sunday, morning showers will push into eastern coasts as the breeze picks up a little, and that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 28 minutes past 12. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and friends here on GB News, TV and radio. You've heard in the news bulletins already, but some sad news coming from the world of equestrian sport. In the last few hours, it's been confirmed that the legendary jockey Alastair Pickett, who won the Derby a record 9 times, has died in Switzerland, aged 86. He also had 116 Royal Ascot victories and was named champion jockey 11 times between 1960 and 1982. I'm delighted now to be joined by horse racing journalist and friend of Leicester's, Rupert Bell. Rupert, good of you to fit us in. A sad day, I know. Your headline take on this extraordinary, iconic man of racing.
In terms of what he did as a jockey, unbelievable. And starting his first win at age 12 just wouldn't happen now. 9 Derby winners, as you alluded to. His single-minded quest for winners. And he didn't mind who he trampled on to get those winners. He just wanted to win. He had an insatiable desire to win. He was a flawed character. Remember, he spent time in jail for tax evasion, so he was by no means perfect. But what he was, in terms of mark on the sport, was just legendary. And I mean that genuinely. And I was a young lad in the 60s, and one of the reasons I got into sport was because of him and what he did. The way he rode was just, it cut him apart from everyone. He had this distinct style of riding, and that made him, you couldn't fail to see him and spot him. But when he was in a race, you knew he had one quest in mind, and that was to win. And that's why he rode nearly 5,000 winners and so many big race wins around the world.
We're just showing pictures of Leicester, and for people who are listening to our conversation on radio rather than television. And there were two fantastic pictures. Her Majesty the Queen looking at the horse, not at the jockey, but the Queen Mother engaged in intense conversation with Leicester. I mean, tax matters and doing time, as far as they were concerned, that was to one side. This was a guy who was a master of a sport that both the Queen Mum and the current Queen adored, and he did well for them.
Absolutely. And if you think about it, this weekend is the Derby weekend, part of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, and the Queen will be there. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of opportunities at Epsom this weekend to remember what he did 9 times. It was simple as this. Remember then, Derby Day was almost like a permanent back holiday. The city closed down. It was run on the first Wednesday in June. And everyone would just say, even if you knew nothing about racing, what's Leicester riding? And that was it. And that's why he was able, he first rode the winner on a horse called Never Say Die. And actually, in terms of his riding style, that was the most correct horse that he should have ever ridden on, because from there on, his approach was wholehearted. It was fearless. And what he had was the drive that top sports people have. You think of when Tiger Woods was in his pomp. He had that insatiable desire to win. Yeah. Lester Pickett was very similar. And in racing, I suppose A.P. McCoy would have been the jump racing equivalent. But in terms of what he achieved, he left his mark on the sport. Yeah. He was a man of few words. He was part deaf, but he just, on a racehorse, he came alive.
The other thing, and again, you'll know this much better than I, but he was a much fought-over jockey as well. I mean, he rode for some of the great owners like Sangster and the great trainers like O'Brien and many, many others. He was a gun for hire because he always got the target.
Well, yes, and he would ring up people, and he didn't matter who it was, and say, I want to ride that horse. And it might be his friend in the weighing room, but if he thought he had a chance of winning, he didn't care who he was sort of upsetting. He'd go direct to the owner and say, I want to ride your horse. And you'd be hard-pressed to say no to Lester Pickett. I mean, he didn't say much, but when he said, you listened. And if he wanted to ride your horse and you thought you were going to get in the Derby, he would give you the best chance. And that's what set him apart. That ruthlessness made him, in demand the world over. And, he, by the end, when he was still riding classic winners well into his 50s, because after he came out of jail, he resumed his riding career. He rode more classics again. He went famously over to the Breeders' Cup within 10 days coming out of retirement. He just, and was riding winners, I think, till he was 59. And it just showed you that he found it very difficult to sort of give up. But when he rode, even in his 50s, he still retained that little bit of magic that we all were able to enjoy. From me, from an early age as a child, brought up with Lester Pickett. Well, he defined why I love this sport now and flat racing. And I will be looking forward to the Derby weekend. And one of the reasons I do is because Lester Pickett was part of my childhood, hearing those commentaries of him winning. And I think lots of people of my generation will have who love racing will be thanking Lester Pickett for giving them the love of the sport.
What a perfect end. I'll merely add to it, but not to take it any further than that. I saw Leicester win the Ledger on Nijinsky in 1970. We are blessed in our memories and in our childhood. Rupert, a real pleasure to talk to you. I know when it's a friend who dies, it's tricky, but you did him proud, and thank you for finding time to do it with us here on GB News. You take care and have a great Sunday afternoon. Thank you. Rupert Belby, great horse racing journalist there on Leicester Pickett. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends, and we've plenty more still to come this afternoon. After the break, due to the continuing fall in prices of wool, farmers are having to opt for sheep breeds that actually molt in order to cut expenditure. Interesting? We'll have all of the latest next, but first, let's get you right up to date with all of the news. Here again is Olivia Guthrie.
Thank you, Alistair. It's 12:34. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. French police are being criticised for their handling of crowds at the Champions League final last night in Paris. Liverpool defender Andy Robertson says tear gas was used on fans trapped outside the Stade de France. UK police say the violent clashes were the worst seen at a European football match. The Reds lost 1-0 to Real Madrid. President Joe Biden will travel to Uvalde, Texas today to pay his respects to the families of those killed in Tuesday's mass school shooting. 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered by a gunman at Robb Elementary School. It's the third mass shooting in the US in the last few weeks. A missile strike has destroyed part of a solar power plant in Ukraine as Russia's attacks in the country intensify. CCTV footage captured the moment the bomb hit in the Kharkiv region. Officials say no one was hurt and the power supply has been restored. It comes as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian assaults in the surrounding area are becoming worse. Environmental campaigners have deflated the tyres of 20 4x4 cars in Edinburgh as part of their campaign to deter people from driving the vehicles in cities. A spokesperson for Edinburgh Tyre Extinguishers says 4x4s are unnecessary, and they say one member of the group estimates that they've targeted around 4,000 cars this year. Police Scotland have called their actions reckless and urged drivers to check their tyres before driving. Tributes are pouring in for legendary jockey Alastair Pickett, who's died aged 86. The 11-time champion and winner of 30 classics was widely regarded as one of the greatest riders of all time. Fellow jockey Frankie Dettori says Leicester was a hero of his and the impact he made in racing is second to none. The chief executive of Great British Racing, Rod Street, adds Leicester was a true titan of sport who transcended horse racing. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Alistair will be back in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, and the left fights the right, and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The time is 22 minutes to 1, and you're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart here on GB News TV and radio. Now, yesterday, we got a terrific response from you to our item on the new Lancaster film, now on release and hopefully in a cinema near you. At the end, I asked the co-director, who also made a brilliant film about the Spitfire, if he might look next at another favourite aircraft of mine, the Mosquito. Now, there are two reasons. My dad, there he is, I think in the middle, used to fly them. Just look at that magnificent creature, the Mosquito. And there he is, probably totally not allowed in the Royal Air Force, but he's the one on the right, rather casual look with his. And there he is, sitting in the navigator's seat. And I cherish those photographs. And I had a terrific exchange with the people behind the People's Mosquito. And there he is again with a mate of his. And there, finally, a picture which I took at the brilliant RAF Museum up at Hendon in North London with my dad in his final years, but with two of our young sons, Freddie in red and little Oggy down there in the white. So I am totally biased, and I do believe in objective journalism, but I also believe if you're going to be a bit biased and a bit partial, you should put your hand up. My hand is duly up for the Mosquito. John Lilly is the managing director of the project, and he and I and one or two others exchanged messages about this over the last couple of days. And there he is, he's got Mosquito on his T-shirt as well. Really great to see you, and I'm so glad you can do it. I've banged on with the pictures of Dad and the Mozzie, but it really is a remarkable thing. Remind folk who don't know what made this a standout aircraft in terms of what it was made of and the speeds that it was capable of.
Good morning. Well, thank you for having me on the show, Alistair. Yeah, the Mosquito, first thing that comes to mind is speed. The aircraft was actually constructed predominantly out of wood, spruce, balsa, ply, and it went against the conventions of the day back in 1940, where we're all having metal aeroplanes like the Spitfire, the Lancaster you've just said. But de Havilland's decided that through some experience of other aircraft like the Havilland Comet Racer in the 30s, he stuck great big stonking Rolls-Royce engines on the front of a very light wooden airframe. You could develop a speed. And it was a bomber initially as a design. And as you know, the Lancaster carried many machine guns as defensive armament, but that slowed it down. With no machine guns, at first people thought de Havillands were a little bit crazy. But when the aircraft was flying faster than a Spitfire, when it took to the skies in 41 in its trials, the RAF suddenly realised they had a war winner here. Yeah. So it was the speed and the ingenuity of going into wood, Alistair, that got the Mosquito its reputation.
Yeah, and also famously the path, you mentioned the Lancaster, but brave crews, including my dad, flying ahead of the Lancasters on some of these huge bombing raids. They were the pathfinders, literally finding the route through and taking some of the hits as they went along for the bombers behind. Now, the People's Mosquito project itself, are you rebuilding a Survivor or are you building from scratch?
We're rebuilding from a Survivor, actually. It was an aircraft that crashed in RAF Coltishall post-war. So we have what's called the mortal remains, and that aircraft serial number is RL249. But from those mortal remains, the CAA regulations of the UK Aviation Authority allow you to do a remanufacturing process. And to be honest, in meetings we've had with the CAA, Alistair, they're not pretty keen on flying 80-year-old wood with 80-year-old glues. Their sort of thing. So it's a remanufacturing process using an identity of an aircraft from 1947.
And the other thing I celebrated, because on this programme I always bang on about young people and giving them a chance and apprenticeships and the rest of it, you're working very closely with the existing industry, but also encouraging youngsters who are learning their trade as aeronautical engineers to come on board and join you in this learning process as well as this potential moment of great history.
Absolutely. We have three pillars to the organisation: to fly, to remember, but also to educate. And under that to educate pillar as well, we believe by telling youngsters our rich aviation heritage, like your father's experience and some of the existing veterans today, we want to inspire young people into aviation engineering. And, we have babies as members of our supporters club, Alistair, but also as well, we're working with some of the industry giants. For example, Airbus is a sponsor of ours. And I'm very shortly going to be taking on, working with one of their guys who's going to help us with the certification side. And this gentleman's in his early 20s. So, yeah, it may be an old aircraft design, but she was a British war winner and also a British export winner. Such was its fearsome reputation for being the first world's multi-role combat aeroplane that after the war, dozens of air forces wanted to buy the Mosquito.
Oh, I didn't know that. So an export winner as well. How brilliant. That goes into my memory bank, and I'm glad to hear it. We were rerunning the pictures I'm terribly proud of Jimmy Stewart, Royal Air Force there with his Mosquito. And when I was talking to the Lancaster gang yesterday, and they're the ones who are also behind the Spitfire one, they were saying that, like, my dad, bless his heart, passed away some years ago, although the memories are still as rich as they ever were. Talking to veterans is crucial. How are you off, as it were, with veterans of Mosquito, people who are coming on board to support the project or simply can share their memories with you as you engage in the project? Because you need a lot of money to get it off the ground.
Yeah, we need around about £8 million, plus with inflation, I can see that going north, not south, unfortunately. But no, veterans, we're in touch with about half a dozen guys still around from the war. People like Flight Lieutenant Colin Bell, DFC, who was now 101 years of age. Flight Lieutenant Des Curtis, who was a navigator. Colin was a pilot. And Des was a navigator on the bouncing bomb Mosquito, the highball Mosquito, and also he fired the Tetsi variant, Alistair, the one with a great big 57mm field gun against U-boats and stuff. But when you speak to these gentlemen, they just give me that inspiration to get this project done, and they've got such energy. And these are the guys that you say, give me a difficult mission, they would answer you and say, give me 24 hours and we would deliver it. They're just wonderful human beings to be around.
The final question, and again, I love these conversations because although I'm a fan and an addict, there's another bit you just nonchalantly threw in there that I didn't know. I mentioned Barnes-Wallis and the bouncing bombs with Lancasters, 617 Squadron, Dam Busters, RAF Scampton and all of that. You just said in passing that Mosquito did a bit of bouncing bomb as well.
That's right. There was a separate squadron set up, 618 Squadron, and they were going to use what we call the highball version. Upkeep was the Lancaster one, the great big drum. But the highball one was like two smaller ones, and they redesigned the Mosquito fuselage because it was such a versatile and brilliant design. The Mosquito became this multi-role combat aeroplane, fighter, night fighter, reconnaissance. But yeah, you could put two bouncing bombs, and their target was going to be against German capital warships, namely the Tirpitz. And so Flight Lieutenant Des Curtis, there's a book he's written which talks about working up to trials to try and get the Tirpitz. But unfortunately, the Germans kind of got slight wind of this and kept moving the Tirpitz further and further out of range from the Mosquito.
Absolutely fascinating story, and I'm so grateful for all of that, John. I wish you well, I really do. We'll keep in touch on this, and folk can follow you on Twitter and it's simply called The People's Mosquito, and your website is?
thepeoplesmosquito.org.uk.
Brilliant. Keep in touch, let me know how it's going, and thanks for your time this Sunday afternoon. Really good to talk to you. John Lilly there from the People's Project, trying to rebuild that magnificent Mosquito aircraft. Time now for Rural Spotlight, and this is a wild one. As costs soar and prices fall for what they make, the market for all farmers getting pretty tricky. But for sheep farmers, it is particularly difficult. So much so that they are actively looking at a breed of sheep that sheds its own fleece, cutting out the cost of shearing and cutting out the cost of the middleman. I am delighted to say that to discuss that, I'm joined by Gareth Wynne-Jones, who is a Welsh sheep farmer. When I first read this, Gareth, I thought someone was taking the mickey, but this is for real, even if it's not quite your cup of tea.
Definitely for real, and it's been happening for many, many years. And, you know, the first sheep would have been wild sheep and they would have molted naturally. So it's not a new idea. And, yeah, there's quite a few on Anglesey, Easy Care, they call them. And, yeah, there's a lot of breeding of them. I'd rather say we should be utilising wool. We should be pushing for more markets for it because, honest to gosh, it's an amazing product. I'll give you an example of what we've done this year. We put wool on our new potatoes in January, a big pile of dags, the old, you know, the bits that nobody wants, the pooey bits and the belly wool, the stuff that a lot of farmers will burn and bury. I put that over my new potatoes in January, believe it or not. And we're reaping them rewards for over a month now. You can watch all this on social media, on my Twitter and Facebook accounts, because, yeah, I'm trying to push more for people to understand the importance of wool and what a fantastic product it is, and such a, you know, diverse product that we can use for so many different things.
What's your relationship like with the clothing industry and manufacturers? Because everybody and people who are listening to our conversation on radio won't know that we've just had a lovely flock of sheep going across, and of course everybody immediately thinks of wool. There's also the issue of meat, but particularly on the wool, there is a sense of people liking to get back to natural product and having less of these artificial manufactured nylons and stuff like that. Does the industry embrace this, or do you have to batter their doors down?
Well, yeah, they're beginning to embrace it. You know, the price of wool is beginning to rise slowly. People are starting to understand how fantastic product wool is. I shore 3 sheep the end of last year, and I gave them fleeces to a Russian friend of mine. Her business is called Welsh Cottage. You can see it on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And she made me a jumper out of my own wool. And I wore it for 6 weeks during lambing, believe it or not. I wouldn't have taken it off, except my wife took it off and washed it because she didn't like the look of it after 6 weeks. But let me tell you, what an amazing jumper. It kept me warm when the wind was blowing. You know, in a shower, it would keep you dry. I'm not saying it was waterproof, but it was showerproof. And it's just such a fantastic product that we should be utilising a lot more, and we should be sharing these things. I'm not telling everybody to wear a jumper for 6 weeks, but you look at how much of the climate I've saved by not washing that jumper. But, you know, I'm wearing it in a lot of my posts on social media during the spring, and people loved it. People absolutely loved it. She sold jumpers all around the world now due to that little advert we did. She's making rugs out of the wool that we're using, and it's, you know, going into insulation.
Let me butt in on that one, because I was talking to a farmer friend of mine who said exactly that. Don't know about 6-week-old jumpers, and I'm glad your wife did say, get that off, we need to wash it. But a farmer friend of mine was saying it is absolutely brilliant for insulation. Funnily enough, for exactly that reason that you mentioned about it being showerproof, that naturally it comes not only with the fibre of the wool, but also with those natural oils that the sheep produces. So as an insulator, it is 100%, and it's environmentally friendly.
Yeah, the oil's called lanolin, and you know, it's the only time of the year I'm allowed to grab the wife, because my hands are like baby's bottoms when we're shearing. They get nice and smooth, and I'm allowed to hug her and caress her. So, you know, there's a lot of bonuses to shearing these sheep as well. And if we can get the message out there, you know, that these sheep are growing this wool once a year, you know, it's a byproduct that we can utilise. And you showed them sheep running along a vineyard there. Now, believe it or not, we've got a vineyard in Conway. And last year, I went there to do a talk and we were trying some wines and I donated some wool to them and they have used it under their vines to keep the weeds down, to keep the moisture in the ground, and it worked wonders for a lovely Welsh vineyard just down the road. And I got a few bottles of wine out of it as well. So that worked really well for both of us.
Nothing wrong with the barter economy at all, my good friend Gareth. So we've got new potatoes and we've got vineyards. Give me one other agricultural, or even for the gardener, someone at home watching our conversation who likes to do a bit of gardening. Give me one more sheep tip before we then have to move on.
Okay, I'll give you a sheep tip as well, because I put them around my strawberries. I had an American tour this morning, an immersive tour. I do these tours for people to come up. We had 6 Americans up here this morning, and they got to try my strawberries that were grown in manure from the cows and protected by the wool from the back of my sheep. Totally organic, totally sustainable, totally biodegradable, and the best tasting strawberries you've ever had. They were blown away. That's the third one.
That is why I absolutely love farming, and I love farmers as well. Inventive, imaginative, and nothing's wasted. Gareth Wynne-Jones in Snowdonia there, we wish you well. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck with all that you do. And don't forget, no longer than 6 weeks for any good jumper. I asked you at the beginning of the programme to get in touch, and you've actually been busier today, I think, than you have been for quite some time. We've picked some of your best. We're going to save us a little bit more time at the end as well, because it is so good. It's the kind of put up or shut up thing that I think I've clearly touched a bit of a chord with. Daniel says, what's the point in even talking about Partygate anymore? We need to move on as a country. We are in a cost of living crisis and people can't afford to heat their homes. Parties are not important. David says there is time before the next election for a new Tory leader to truly draw a line under Johnson's debacle of leadership. Move on, certainly, but that simply isn't possible with Boris. I have sacked everybody and it's time... Oh, he says time for Penny Mordaunt. Oh, cheeky. Snuck that one in. There we are. Keep them coming. We will have time before the end of the programme, but the time now is 5 to 1. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. Lots more in our final hour, where we'll be discussing more on the state of politics and taking a look ahead to the Jubilee. All of that to come. But first, let's bring you up to date with the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK's looking cloudier than yesterday, with showers developing for many areas. It will feel cooler too. Let's take a look at those details. In southwest England, there'll be a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will possibly be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. And it's a similar story for the southeast, bright or sunny spells and scattered showers, although the showers likely to be lighter. Wales will also have a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers could be heavy, with a risk of hail or thunder here too. There'll be a similar mix of bright or sunny spells and scattered showers across the northwest of England, although most of the showers will be light, as will be the northerly winds. It will be a cooler feeling day in the northeast, especially along the coast. Also rather cloudy, with limited bright or sunny spells. Few showers are possible, but mainly dry. A similar story as we head north to southern Scotland. Also rather cloudy here, with a few bright or sunny spells, mostly dry, but an isolated shower is possible. There will be more in the way of sunny spells as we move to Northern Ireland, where it will be mostly dry, although an isolated shower is also possible here. Showers tending to ease through the evening, with clear spells developing for many areas, winds remaining mostly light. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable, and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
Join us for a special GB News event.
The celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
From pageantry here at the Palace
to the parties in your street.
We'll bring you 4 days of
unforgettable moments
this bank holiday weekend.
Join us live up and down the country as we share your memories
of Her Majesty's extraordinary reign.
Send us your stories, photographs and videos
at jubilee@gbnews.uk.
Come and celebrate with us
on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome. It has just slipped past 1 o'clock, and if you've just joined us, hello. If you've been with us since 12, thank you very much indeed. I'm Alastair Stewart, and we are into the final hour of our programme. I'll be keeping you company here on TV and radio, GB News. We have plenty more still to come, including more on our top discussion on the state of politics, Labour and the Conservative parties. I'll be talking to MPs from both sides. Also, in the last hour of the programme, 3.7 million of us have decided to pay in the last couple of years to see a GP, as the NHS still battles with the backlog since lockdown and the coronavirus. All of that to come, but first let's bring you right up to date with all of today's news. Here is Olivia Guthrie.
Thank you. It's 1 minute past 1. I'm Olivia Guthrie in the GB newsroom. The government is investigating what UK police say was the worst violence seen at a European football match. Sports Minister Nigel Huddleston says clashes between football fans and French police at the Champions League final last night are concerning and upsetting. UEFA say thousands of fans tried to enter the grounds with fake tickets. But Liverpool defender Andy Robertson has criticised the police handling of the event, saying a ticket he gave one of his friends didn't work, despite being bought through the club. The Reds lost 1-0 to Real Madrid at the Stade de France. President Joe Biden and his wife Jill are in Texas today to pay their respects to the families of those killed in Tuesday's mass school shooting. 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered by a gunman at Robb Elementary in the town of Uvalde. It's the 3rd mass shooting in the US in the last few weeks. Vice President Kamala Harris says the country should have the courage to take action.
We are not sitting around waiting to figure out what the solution looks like. You know, we're not looking for a vaccine. We know what works on this. It includes, let's have an assault weapons ban. You know what an assault weapon is? You know how an assault weapon was designed? It was designed for a specific purpose, to kill a lot of human beings quickly.
In Ukraine, a missile strike has destroyed part of a solar power plant as Russia's attacks in the country intensify. CCTV footage captured the moment the bomb hit in the Kharkiv region. Officials say no one was hurt and the power supply has been restored. It comes as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian assaults in the surrounding areas are becoming worse.
The situation is very complicated, especially in those areas in the Donbass and Kharkiv region where the Russian army is trying to squeeze at least some result for themselves. It's indescribably difficult there, and I'm grateful to all those who withstood this onslaught of the occupiers.
Back here, the Labour Party is to push for a vote on the Prime Minister's decision to change the Ministerial Code of Conduct. Critics say Boris Johnson's proposals water down the rules, but the Cabinet Office says it's disproportionate for ministers to lose their job for what they say are minor breaches. The changes mean they'll instead face a salary suspension or will need to issue a public apology. Environmental campaigners have deflated the tyres of 20 4x4 cars in Edinburgh as part of their campaign to deter people from driving the vehicles in cities. The group has been deflating the tyres of SUVs across the UK, with one member estimating they've slashed around 4,000 this year. A spokesperson for Edinburgh Tyre Extinguishers says 4x4s are unnecessary and massive killer vehicles, but Police Scotland have called their actions reckless and urge drivers to check their tyres before driving. Boris Johnson wants to bring back pounds, ounces, feet and inches. The government's going to launch a consultation on the use of imperial measurements in Britain to coincide with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. The UK has used metric units since 2000 following an EU directive. Traders are currently legally required to use metric measurements for sale by weight or the measure of fresh produce. Well, as the UK prepares to celebrate Her Majesty's Jubilee, the Prime Minister says no monarch has served the country so well. In a personal message to the Queen, Boris Johnson thanked her for her exemplary service, praising the institution of the Crown and the exceptional individual who wears it. The PM also described the Queen as a steadying, guiding force for the nation, adding Her Majesty embodied the very idea of what a constitutional monarchy should be. And tributes have poured in for legendary jockey Alastair Pickett, who's died at the age of 86. The 11-time champion and winner of 30 classics was widely regarded as one of the greatest riders of all time. Fellow jockey Frankie Dettori said Leicester was a hero of his and the impact he made in racing is second to none. The chief executive of Great British Racing, Rod Street, added Leicester was a true titan of sport, a one-off who transcended horse racing. Mr Pickett's son-in-law and horse trainer William Haggis confirmed his death in Switzerland this morning. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's go back to Alistair.
Olivia, thanks very much indeed. On yesterday's programme, I was talking to a guest from the Taxpayers Alliance, and they said something which I felt was really quite profound. They said that Labour was now a party that understood the need for lower taxes. So in the context of our big take before the Jubilee weekend on the state of politics, I'm delighted now to be joined by a good friend and a regular appearee, if that's the right word, on this programme. There he is, Graham Stringer, who is the Labour Member of Parliament for Blakely and Broughton. Graham, good to see you. What do you make of that assertion from the Taxpayers Alliance, of all people, that your party is slowly but surely becoming a party that understands the need to reduce taxation rather than raise it?
We're in a strange situation, aren't we, of political cross-dressing, where the Conservative Party, who claim to be in favour of low taxation, have now given this country the highest tax burden that there has been since just after the end of the Second World War. There is no doubt that the tax burden on people on low incomes or no incomes, because there's a lot of flat taxation on VAT, is very difficult for them at a time of high inflation. And rather surprisingly, at a time we're having high taxation, our public services are invisible to many people. Getting into the health service, finding public transport, finding council housing is very difficult indeed for many people. So we need a realignment where poor people, or relatively not very well off people, can afford to live, and we need investment in public services.
Yep.
So
one of the things, Graham, that I'm picking up
but we need a redistributive tax system.
Yeah. I beg your pardon, I thought you'd finished, I beg your pardon. But picking up on exactly that point, we need, to quote your words back to you, what I'm picking up from a lot of people is that they quite liked the Rachel Reeves reaction to Rishi Sunak's statement. They quite like the idea that they're saying, no, national insurance shouldn't have gone up. What they don't like is your party simply banging on about the Tories having nicked the windfall tax. What they want from you, and you began to do it just then, is a lot more precise detail on what you would do if you were in power. Because that test may be, as John Rentoul said right at the beginning of the programme, a year and a half away. You need the detail, don't you?
I agree with that. We do need to be, not just right now this second, but in the run-up to the next general election, we need to be very clear on our tax policy. We have gone along for far too long a period with flat rate taxation. It was one of the issues that was only just about mentioned during the EU debate. But if you have VAT, if you have other flat rate taxes, then the millionaire pays exactly the same as somebody on the minimum wage, and that's not ideal. So I think we should be moving away from VAT, flat rate taxes, and there are lots of them, towards taxing both according to income and according to wealth. And we need to be clear about that. I certainly advocated a long time before the government did, as the Labour Party did, that where there has been accidental profits, really, because of the increase in oil prices, then having a retrospective windfall tax was the right thing to do.
Do you think that Sir Keir Starmer is up to that kind of analysis? It just strikes me as being a relatively objective observer of these things, that Rachel Reeves, who has a background in banking, worked for the Bank of England for a while as well, and certainly Pat McFadden, who you and I have both known for a long, long time, has got a real grasp on the essentials of both monetary and fiscal policy. I get no impression from Sir Keir Starmer that he has.
I think the Labour Party, really since we lost the 92 election, has been very wary of saying that we would increase any kind of tax. So we went into the 92, 97, virtually all the elections, saying we would not increase income taxes. And what we've ended up with is what people have called stealth taxes, which are flat rate taxes, which hurt the lowest income families. And I think we have to be brave and say that. I mean, I think you're right that at the present time, Pat McFadden and Keir Starmer would not be enthusiastic about saying that, because the lesson that the Labour Party learnt from the 92 election is if you are honest with the electorate and say you're going to look at putting up income tax, even a small amount, the electorate don't like it. But we have a situation where the health service is in a mess. Yeah. We haven't got enough housing. I'm not going to go through the list again, but we have to do something to put that right and mend our public services. And the poorest people can't pay for it. Sure. So I think there is an obvious solution.
Yeah, and I'm glad you didn't go through it again, because you said it with great clarity and authority earlier on, but the message is received. And the key point of that message is whatever you believe in, get it out there, be clearer about it and argue for it. I've got that. Is it that absence of clarity, candour and, frankly, self-confidence that has opened the door to Tony Blair again to say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to have a conference about the future of Britain? And you get John Rentoul on this programme an hour ago saying, do you know what, there are even people in the Tory party like Ruth Davidson who might find some of that quite attractive.
I think where Tony Blair is correct is that there is an absence of new ideas or clear ideas that will deal with the problems we have. Where I think he's wrong, he's putting together a conference of people who basically, what holds them together, whether they're ex-Conservative, ex-Labour or of no known political party, is that they failed to accept the decision in the referendum of 2016, and they were right in the vanguard of trying to overturn that decision. And a possible invite to the President of France, Macron, who has certainly not got this country's interests at heart. He has done a great deal to make it difficult for this country to benefit from having left the EU, actually exemplifies and undermines. This is a conference of people who do not want this country to be independent and would like us back in the European Union.
Absolutely fascinating. And my final point is exactly that, Graham, because when I said to people about put up or shut up, the critics of the Tories, and you have absolutely no obligation to take a position one way or the other on Boris Johnson and his travails, but the number of people who say Johnson's real problem is not parties or cakes or stuff like that. It's people in the mass media and people within his own party who will never forgive him for having pulled off Brexit. I think that's kind of what you're saying as well.
I think that one of the surprising things, which you don't see much comment on in the national press, is that while Boris Johnson has always been popular amongst the Conservative grassroots, he has very few friends indeed within the Parliamentary Conservative Party. I wouldn't have to move to my second hand to count the number of people who I think are enthusiastic Johnson supporters. He is supported at the present time for two reasons. One is that both sides of the Conservative Party, Remainers, Leavers, left, right, centre, free marketeers, not free marketeers, are frightened of the other lot replacing him. And there is a genuine fear because there's not an obvious candidate to replace him. And the second thing is, it's a similar point really, they still think that because Boris Johnson persuades people who have never voted Conservative before in their lives to vote Conservative, whether anybody else can carry off that trick.
Absolutely fascinating, and thank you for that candour, Graham. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, for your thoughts on Labour, Starmer, Blair, and indeed on Johnson. Always good to talk to you. I hope you have a great Sunday afternoon. Thank you for your time. Graham Stringer there, the Member of Parliament for Blakely and Broughton. Well, we've been on nearly a year now, and from the outset, we covered your concerns about the National Health Service. At the very beginning, we were talking about GPs at the height of the pandemic, waiting lists, not being able to see a GP. Now we're in calmer times medically, but those problems persist. So much so that research shows a record number of people, you, resorting to private GPs at your own cost. Such are your concerns about getting treatment. Well, one of those very early guests, and was often on the programme, I'm delighted to say, was Dr. Richard Vaughtry. Richard was, first of all, chair of the BMA's GP committee when we began our conversations. He's now moved on and, as it were, is back to full-time GP work as well, and there he is. Great to see you again, Richard. It is an extraordinary bit of research from YouGov that incredible number, over 3 million people. And it's not cheap, I know, because I used to go private to get my COVID tests done to get safely into work. It is not cheap. But over 3 million of people said, I'm not waiting anymore, I'm going private. Does that worry you?
Yeah, it is a concern, Alistair. I mean, it's a reflection of the huge pressure that general practice in this country continues to be under. Let's not forget, though, that over 1 million consultations take place in general practice every day. So large numbers of people are seeing their GP, practice nurse, members of the practice team on a day-to-day basis. But the bottom line is there are simply not enough GPs and practice nurses and pharmacists in general practice to cope with the record numbers of people wanting an appointment with their GP. And so we're doing our level best, but we understand the frustrations and share the frustrations at the problems that some people have at getting an appointment.
We talked on one of those occasions when you were good enough to come on the programme 6-9 months ago about a profound sit-down conversation with the then Secretary of State for Health, and obviously that office holder has changed since then, but the reality still remains the same. Time for a fundamental rethink. In the olden days, if you paid private medical insurance to take some of the strain off the NHS but get what you wanted, you got tax relief. Is it now time to say, OK, fine, if you want to go private, great, it eases the burden on the NHS for those that can't afford to do it any other way, but the government will give you a little bit of help, a little bit of thank you for doing that?
I would be concerned about setting up a two-tier system. What we don't want in this country is for some people to get access to a GP service that others are unable to access. What we need is a comprehensive, easily accessible and good quality NHS general practice service. And that's what the vast majority of GPs and their teams want to be able to provide. It's what the vast majority of our patients want. What we need is long-term investment in recruiting and retaining more GPs. We still have fewer GPs than anywhere else in many parts of Europe in comparable terms. And yet we're seeing a growing older population who need more care. So we simply need that investment in the long term. But we also need investment in the premises. Many practices want to be able to take on new staff, but simply don't have the space within the building to take those staff on. And so we do need the investment there too.
Yeah, but you are famous for having an open mind on these matters, and I've greatly enjoyed our conversations over the months. But I was reading a piece by Alison Pearson, for example, who works with Liam Halligan, a friend of mine, and they do a brilliant podcast. And Pearson was saying, she writes in the Telegraph too, not really having a profound problem with more money for the NHS, and we all know we're paying slightly more national insurance initially to go to the health service and ultimately to go to the care system. But what Pearson said, and I 100% agree with her, not until we've had a profound think about what you guys and gals do in the NHS. You can't just keep chucking money at it without asking some profound questions, like going private for GPs or joining the queue.
Yeah, I understand those frustrations sort of when people sort of are struggling to get an appointment, but I don't believe that developing a private service is the answer. We've seen that in dentistry, and we know all too well how difficult it is for many people to get access to an NHS dentist now, as more and more dentists have become private. We don't want to see the same thing happening in general practice. We know that we can offer a really good service. We offer a comprehensive service from cradle to grave. And we know that in normal times, patient satisfaction with GP services is very, very high. But what we've been through is not normal times, but we've also seen the impact of a decade of lack of investment in NHS general practice. The government have been focusing on hospitals and hospital services and recruiting staff into hospitals and not had the same level of interest in recruiting staff into general practice and community-based services. Similarly with community nursings and other services as well. They're struggling too. We need that investment in the community because that's where the vast majority of people are seen and cared for.
Richard, my final point is this. I completely accept your desire, and I share it, not to have a two-tier system, just because I'm lucky enough to have slightly more disposable income than some folk. There should still be as much equality of opportunity there as possible. But the NHS has had billions and billions over the last couple of decades. If you don't want a two-tier system, what are you prepared to buy in as a leading light and a top voice in the NHS? What are you prepared to buy into to make sure that the taxpayer remains well-served, enjoys equality of opportunity, but isn't just constantly being asked to write cheques?
Yeah, I understand the points you're making, Alistair, but actually in relative terms compared with other countries in Europe, in America and elsewhere, we actually don't invest significant levels of investment in our healthcare services in comparable terms. Clearly, it's a lot that we spend, but we also have a growing population who need care. But we need to look at other ways of delivering care as well. maybe through more electronic means, maybe through the use of digital means that people can access those services with confidence, broadening sort of the availability of pharmacists, physios, paramedics and others working alongside GPs and their teams, so that we have a comprehensive service. It shouldn't just be an expectation that the GP is the person that you have to see, because in many cases, other professionals can offer a good, if not better, service if they're working in the right way.
Totally agree with particularly that last point on the pharmacy. I was chatting to my own local pharmacy in Alresford in Hampshire the other day, and he just simply said, I do wish they'd recognise out there that we are primary care as well as GPs. There's a lot that can be got out of a system which is fundamentally seeking to do a good thing, but perhaps might be able to do it a wee bit better. Richard, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for breaking into your Sunday to share time with us. You're welcome on the programme anytime. Thank you. That's Dr. Richard Vaughtry, former chair of the BMA's GP committee and now busy back at work. The time is 1:23 and we've plenty more still to come in the final half hour or so of Alastair Stewart and Friends. After the break, we'll be looking ahead to next week's Jubilee celebrations with a very good friend of mine, Charles Ray. But first, let's bring you up to date with the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK's looking cloudier than yesterday, with showers developing for many areas. It will feel cooler too. Let's take a look at those details. In southwest England, there'll be a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will possibly be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. And it's a similar story for the southeast, bright or sunny spells and scattered showers, although the showers likely to be lighter. Wales will also have a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers could be heavy, with a risk of hail or thunder here too. There'll be a similar mix of bright or sunny spells and scattered showers across the northwest of England, although most of the showers will be light, as will be the northerly winds. It will be a cooler feeling day in the northeast, especially along the coast. Also rather cloudy, with limited bright or sunny spells. A few showers are possible, but mainly dry. A similar story as we head north to southern Scotland. Also rather cloudy here, with a few bright or sunny spells, mostly dry, but an isolated shower is possible. There will be more in the way of sunny spells as we move to Northern Ireland, where it will be mostly dry, although an isolated shower is also possible here. Showers tending to ease through the evening, with clear spells developing for many areas, winds remaining mostly light. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, welcome back. It is 27 minutes past 1. And yes, I was actually looking at a newspaper. I apologise. It's a day of great honesty. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and friends here on GB News. Now, ahead of next weekend's Jubilee celebrations, the newspapers are awash with the details of what's going to be happening and anecdotes from the great and the good and bits and bobs about it all. For those of you watching on television, you will now see me hold up this newspaper. And if you're listening to us on radio, thank you for doing that. But it is from the Observer newspaper, and it's pages, 34 and 35, and they've asked 5 top royal commentators, ranging from my old mate Nicholas Owen, who I knew at ITM, to the great Peter Hunt, who was at the BBC, to give their best anecdotes and recollections. And I couldn't be happier nor more proud that one of them is my very good friend, Charles Ray. And he is there. Now, there he is. I'm glad you're smiling as well, because there are a lot of you out there, but only 5 have been chosen. I tell you the other thing, I read it this morning with them.
Answered the phone, Alistair.
Smile as broad as you know me capable of smiling. You chose Her Majesty's humorous side.
Well, yes, they asked questions because they wanted some off-the-cuff stories about it. And, you know, the Queen has got, a good sense of humour. Certainly at the receptions, and as you well know, Alistair, you cannot interview the Queen as such, so the only chance you get to speak to her and see her in, if you like, as a human being is at these receptions, and it's nice to have chats with her, and it's gracious of her to remember so many of us as well at those times.
Quite extraordinary. And as you look at what's going to be laid before her, two things that struck me, one in the newspapers this morning, but also one that broke about an hour ago. The one in the newspapers is pictures of the Duke of Cambridge, Prince William, looking just very slightly nervous on the horse because he's going to do the honours at Trooping the Colour, but also the news that Her Majesty will not be attending the Derby. 2 horsey matters, as you know, I have a passion about that, but both of them quite a big impact on Her Majesty.
It is. There's certainly the Derby one because, as you quite rightly say, the horses scenario is her passion, absolute passion, and we've seen so many pictures of her at race meetings where she's really, shaking her hands as she's got her horses going. As it happens, she hasn't got any horses running, but I'm sure she will be tucked up somewhere actually watching the Derby. It's a shame she can't make it, but the clear thing is, to be perfectly honest, Alistair, is she's not going to attend all these events. So she's going to have to pace herself. And I suspect, well, I don't suspect, I know that what is going to happen with each day is that she, with her aides and her doctors, will look at things and we'll see how the old legs are going, if they can work and everything else. It was nice to see her out during the week, even though it was on the back of the £60,000 golf buggy at the Chelsea Flower Show. She looked resplendent. She looked fantastic. And I think we'll be seeing that buggy a lot more.
Yeah. I found it also interesting that she, again, as you rightly say, with the advice of her medics and the rest of the personal team, she's having a wee break up at Balmoral before it all starts unfolding. And the thing that struck me about that, Charles, was that the public, and we're seeing pictures of her and Prince of Wales planting a tree up at Balmoral with the magnificent Highland ponies in the background and some of the grandchildren there. But she loves it up there. It's chill out time. And here's my point, Charles. These celebrations will see her people lining the mile, going bonkers and cheering her and the rest of it. But for her, there are profound memories as well. It's been a long reign, and it's had its ups, it's had its downs, and many of them took place in and around Buckingham Palace and the Mall.
Yes, and it kicks off on June the 2nd, which is, in effect, the anniversary of her coronation in 1953. She acceded to the throne the year before, in February 1952. Yes, everything is going to be deeply personal for her. And, we don't do these celebrations by half. We are the kings and queens of these sort of celebrations. It's going to be a fantastic, 4 days.
Charles, thank you so much. I'm sure over that period you and I will natter again. I certainly hope so. But again, seriously, congratulations on being one of those chosen to appear in that excellent Observer spread. And the others are good as well, but he's the best. And please don't forget to join us next weekend for our Jubilee special across the whole of GB News. We start on a Thursday and we go right through the whole of the weekend, all the bits and bobs that you really want to see. And we also desperately want to hear from you. Send in your emails with your memories, your reflections, your pictures, even your video clips to gbviews@gbnews.uk. You're watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've plenty more still to come this afternoon. Delighted to say that I'll be joined by a Conservative Member of Parliament to unpick some of what has been said on the programme already about the state of his party, the state of politics and where we are going next. And we'll also hear a little bit more of what you think, and you have been on fire this afternoon. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the latest news headlines. Here again is Olivia Guthrie.
It's 1:33. Here's the latest in the GB newsroom. The government is investigating what UK police say was the worst violence seen at a European football match. Sports Minister Nigel Huddleston says clashes between football fans and French police at the Champions League final last night are concerning and upsetting. Liverpool defender Andy Robertson has also criticised the police handling of the event, saying he had friends involved in the incident. The Reds lost 1-0 to Real Madrid at the Stade de France. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Defence says the Royal Air Force and the Navy will be protecting fans at the Qatar World Cup. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace says British personnel will join forces with their Qatari counterparts to tackle terrorism and other threats to the tournament. The FIFA World Cup in the country is due to start on November the 21st. President Joe Biden and his wife Jill are in Texas today to pay their respects to the families of those killed in Tuesday's mass school shooting. 19 children and 2 teachers were murdered by a gunman at Robb Elementary in the town of Uvalde. It's the 3rd mass shooting in the US in the last few weeks. A missile strike has destroyed part of a solar power plant in Ukraine as Russia's attacks in the country intensify. CCTV footage captured the moment the bomb hit in the Kharkiv region. Officials say no one was hurt and the power supply has now been restored. It comes as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russian assaults in the surrounding areas are becoming worse. And tributes are pouring in for legendary jockey Alastair Pickett, who's died aged 86. The 11-time champion and winner of 30 classics was widely regarded as one of the greatest riders of all time. Fellow jockey Frankie Dettori says Alastair was a hero of his and the impact he made in racing is second to none. The chief executive of British Racing, Rod Street, adds Alastair was a true titan of sport who transcended horse racing. We're TV, online and DAB plus radio. We're GB News. We'll have more at the top of the hour. Don't go anywhere. Alistair will be back in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's just coming up to 20 to 1, and you are watching and listening to Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, TV and radio. More of your thoughts now on our top story, starting with JT, who says if the Tory rebels don't shut up, then they need to go. But they won't give up their large salaries or privileges, will they? Mark via email, whatever problem we have with our political disenfranchisement, lovely word, Tony Blair is not and never will be the answer. He needs to crawl back under his rock. That's a bit harsh on the rock, but there we are. We like to share all views here. Andrew via Twitter, the Prime Minister clearly does not know the boundary between right and wrong. He is trashing the name of the Conservative Party. We also have Jane, who says the Tories need to get behind their leader. The tension in the party needs to be resolved before the next general election if Boris is to stand a chance of winning. There we are. Keep them coming in. We've got a couple of minutes at the very end to share your final thoughts as well. Now, we've been speaking about problems in the Conservative Party and indeed within the Labour Party. Graham Stringer, Labour MP, was very, very clear on the need for greater clarity and honesty from Labour, particularly on tax and spending. But I'm delighted now that my final guest joining me is waving the Conservative flag. And there he is, Conservative Member of Parliament for North West Leicestershire, Andrew Bridgen. Can I start off, Andrew, with something that I've just read out a little bit of on a couple of those emails, but also John Rentoul said at the very beginning of the programme. The problem with the rebels is they don't have to go public, and a lot of the people who are tweeting in say, you know, either put up or shut up. It's all a bit destabilising. What's your view?
Alistair, I haven't really changed my view from January. I can't help but think it would have been better had the Prime Minister stood down in January. That would have avoided all the police investigation. It would have been better for the country, and it would have been better for Parliament and ultimately better for the Conservative Party. But we are where we are. Unfortunately, a large proportion of our electorate have lost confidence in the Prime Minister.
Do you believe that the parliamentary party has as well? Because Graham Stringer, Labour MP, I hasten to add, says that he wouldn't need both hands to count the number of members of the Conservative parliamentary party that actually supports Boris Johnson and for what he stands for. The only reason they stick with him is because deep down, you know and they know he's still a winner.
He is a proven winner, but I think where we are now is that the Conservative Party itself are feeling, after the Sue Gray report, that what we've seen for the last 6 months has been a concentration of all the efforts of government to keep the Prime Minister in position. Normally, the old adage in politics is if you're on the front pages for 6 days or 7 days, you'd have to resign. This has been going on for 6 months, and it's difficult to see that the government can be concentrating on the big issues. I think the Prime Minister's had a very good response to the situation in Ukraine, but we're mired in the cost of living crisis. And I think when you see a solution from a Conservative government, which is effectively mean that every household in the country is now reliant on grants to see them through the cost of living crisis, I can't help but think that the Conservative solution, really, Alistair, is that we should leave the people enough of their own money by reducing taxes, look after the vulnerable, but not be paying basically grants out to every household in the country. And of course, people who've got more than one house will be getting more than one grant.
And that is a fascinating dilemma that has really angered an awful lot of people. You will have seen what Dan Hannan wrote in the Telegraph this morning, former Conservative member of the European Parliament, not only agreeing with you and I, and we discussed this on another GB News programme back on Friday, but that your party runs the real risk of having lost the plot on low tax, low spending, small state. And I had the Taxpayers Alliance on this programme yesterday saying Labour are now getting it. Labour understand lower tax makes sense. That's almost an existential problem for you lot, Andrew.
It is an existential threat. And if I give the example, Alistair, of my own constituency, North West Leicestershire, I became the MP here 12 years ago. It was considered the poorest, most deprived constituency in the county of Leicestershire. And working with also a Conservative-controlled district council, which is coterminous with my seat, in 12 years, through Conservative policies of being business-friendly, promoting business and economic growth, building good quality housing, North West Leicestershire now is the only part of the county that's above average salaries for the UK. It's really on the up. We have never had any levelling up money, and we're probably never going to get any. But from our retained business rates, we've been able to invest £23 million in a state-of-the-art new sports and leisure centre for my major conurbation of Colville. And we can do that time and time again by just being allowed to retain the benefits of our own economic growth. And we're delivering the highest economic growth in the UK, and we have done consistently, and those are Conservative policies at a local level that are delivering that. And I think we need to get back to conservatism, Alistair. The country's never needed it more, and everything else we've had over the last 6 months has been a distraction.
Fascinating. And you will also have seen not only the Dan Hannan piece, but significantly Rishi Sunak's own piece. He wrote an essay, an article in the Sun newspaper, saying that he will strain every sinew in his body, as it were, between now and the autumn budget to make life better for people, to ease the tax burden. And the Sun leader actually says, just cut taxes. I think the Sun probably agrees with you. Let's not just keep bailing folk out. Cut taxes and let us make our decisions. Here's the point, Andrew. If he were to do that, even though deep down you think the Prime Minister should have gone, he hasn't gone, does that make the position potentially recoverable? Because the briefings from Number 10 are that general election may be as near as a year away rather than the full 18 months, 2 years that he's got to run. Is it recoverable?
I suspect some people in Number 10 will be pushing for an election rather sooner than that. We know the facts. No society can tax itself to prosperity. Taxes have never been higher. The Conservative values are that we should be leaving people their own money to look after their own households, and then we only have to protect those on the lowest income. We're almost moving to a sort of universal basic income situation, and I can't think of anything less conservative than being reliant on the state for my household survival.
Did you say that people in Number 10 will be pushing for a general election even sooner than I suggested?
Well, if you were being cynical, you'd suggest that these spending measures could get us through to the autumn. And, I wouldn't be surprised if some people haven't got an eye on an early election this autumn.
Final question for you, Andrew. And again, we're both long enough in the tooth to have been through it last time and seen it tried before. What do you make of Tony Blair considering putting his toe back in the water with this Future of Britain conference? John Rentoul, interestingly, said that he thought Ruth Davidson, former leader of the Conservative Party in Scotland, and others, not just Labour types, might find such a venture quite attractive.
Well, I'm all for encouraging political debate. The credibility of Tony Blair, I think perhaps those around him he needs to have a bit of a reality check. In large swathes of the country, he's not well regarded, and I always worry if I'm actually agreeing too much with any of his policies. Quite honestly, Alistair.
Final question to you is this then, and a golden opportunity. You can flat bat it or you can say pass. Dan Hodges writes in the Daily Mail, for all of those people, maybe he means you as well, Andrew, who want Johnson still to go, should either put up or shut up, go public or just move on.
Again, I didn't quite catch the last bit.
Just go public on it again or move on and leave Johnson alone?
Well, those who... We have a system in the Conservative Party for registering displeasure with the Prime Minister. I think those... You've heard people's grounds for doing so. And quite honestly, the MPs who are speaking out, they're only reflecting the views of our constituents. I got back from Parliament on Thursday night. I've been out in my local community at an excellent Jubilee celebration on Friday and again this morning. And I'm afraid half of my constituents are registering their displeasure with the Prime Minister's performance.
How nervous are you about the two by-elections?
Well, I'm pretty relaxed about it, that ultimately I accept that we're all accountable to the public. We all will be at a general election. The only vehicle that can change the position regarding the Prime Minister is the Conservative Parliamentary Party through the 1922 committee, and I think we're going to see some movement on that over the next week.
Back on Friday and today. Thank you very much indeed. And I hope you have a good what's left of your Sunday. Thanks for breaking into it for us. Thank you very much indeed. Andrew Bridgen there, the Conservative Member of Parliament for North West Leicestershire, being very candid and very honest about what he thinks should happen. As indeed have you been. You have been on fire, and I'm most grateful for it. A really busy inbox today. Let's start with Jane via Twitter. Jane says, the Tories need to get behind their leader. The tension in the party needs to be resolved before the next general election if Boris is to stand a chance of winning. I think I read that one out once time before. But anyway, I apologise if I did. But there we go. Mike comes to us via email responding to our, the Mosquito fighter plane segment. How lovely, thank you. And he says his dad also flew but in Halifax bombers as a flight engineer during World War II. So I have a soft spot for those aircraft. However, I do think the Mosquito was easily the best pound-for-pound aeroplane of the period. Thank you for that. I like the Halifax as well. Kind of had lattice windows at the side, didn't it? But what I didn't know until I did the interview was that we sold them abroad as well afterwards, which is quite excellent. So thank you for that. John comes to us via email, and John says, we need to move on from both Partygate and grizzling about lockdowns that were implemented largely more severely across most of the civilised world. We have to start digging into the process of negotiating an improved Northern Ireland protocol. That issue underpins our whole disengagement with the EU and plotting our own path and our own trade agreements with other countries. Intriguing. We've done a lot on that, and we will continue so to do, not least with the authentic voice of business in Northern Ireland and the Chambers of Commerce over there. But thank you for raising that point, and I totally agree with you. That protocol is very, very important, and we on GB News are keeping a very close eye upon it. May joins the conversation, also via email, to say, great segment with the Welsh farmer on the programme. The war in Ukraine has shown the need to support our farmers. Hear, hear, May, hear, hear. Right across the country, and to introduce a new level of food security so that we never depend on anyone else again. May raises the point of food security there, a crucial point, and it's interesting, isn't it, that the government have talked a lot about energy security and trying to build those nuclear power stations as quickly as possible and get more alternative and renewable energy supplies. But hey, goodness me, food is absolutely vital. So let's have a little bit more on that as well. Food security really does count, and the men and women in the farming industry need all the help that they can get to keep you and I full and happy. Amber joins the conversation via email to say the NHS has been in disarray for a long time, even before COVID. We must keep a free healthcare system, but there is a need to restructure it completely. There's too much middle management in the NHS and not enough that we actually need. Thank you very much indeed for raising that point, Amber. What I was trying to get across with Richard Vaughtry, and I really enjoyed talking to him again, was nicking an idea that my friend Alison Pearson wrote about and discussed with Liam Halligan, and that is, if you can prove the case for more public spending and more tax, I don't mind. But the constant mantra is more money for the NHS, more money for the NHS. And I agree with you, we need to have a fundamental think about it as well. And I think that Richard Vaughtry said he was up for that as well, so long as it didn't end up being a two-tier system, one for the wealthy and one for those who don't perhaps have so much money. So thank you very much for that. Arthur joins the conversation via email. There's no chance that Boris will win a general election. He has taken the public for fools, and the Tory party will be fools if they keep him. It is time for a change, he says. So, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel in case you missed any of those conversations that those lovely viewers were referring back to, or that I was referring to in my subsequent conversations. All of our programmes are there on our YouTube channel. We are at GBNews. And also, let me just remind you of something that it really does matter to me, because I'm working Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday of the Jubilee weekend, and I'm so looking forward to it. What I said after I'd finished talking to my old mate, Charles Ray, we really do want you to send us your stories of Her Majesty the Queen. Were you lucky enough to meet her, perhaps, on one occasion, or be in the same place and the same space as her? All of those Jubilee memories, we really do want them. Anecdotes, pictures and videos. You can send them to us via jubilee@gbnews.uk. And we will share as many of them on our special programmes coming up from Thursday all the way through over the weekend. That's it from me. Next up, I'm delighted to say, is my good friend Darren Grimes, and he should be sitting... There he is, smiling from ear to ear on the desk just over there behind me. What are you tackling today, Darren?
Or Alistair, who's going to be discussing Mickey Mouse degrees. Is it a con to go to university and study these things that actually are no use to man nor beast? Apart from, Alistair, it seems to me, making a whole host of students leave university somewhere to the left of Chairman Mao. So we're going to be discussing all of these things. There's been an argument around decolonisation of the curriculum and these really important matters that actually matter to the next generation. Is it worth their time and money, Alistair? One to watch.
I totally agree with you, and having been a former Deputy President of the National Union of Students, been there, done it. And I remember one group was called the Communist Party of Britain, Marxist-Leninist bit in brackets. Have a great show, Darren. To all of you at home, thank you so much for joining us on TV and on radio. I'll be back on Thursday for the Jubilee celebrations. Until then, a very good afternoon to you. Bye-bye.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK's looking cloudier than yesterday, with showers developing for many areas. It will feel cooler too. Let's take a look at those details. In southwest England, there'll be a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers will possibly be heavy, with hail and thunder at times. And it's a similar story for the southeast. Bright or sunny spells and scattered showers, although the showers likely to be lighter. Wales will also have a mix of sunny spells and scattered showers. The showers could be heavy, with a risk of hail or thunder here too. There'll be a similar mix of bright or sunny spells and scattered showers across the northwest of England, although most of the showers will be light, as will be the northerly winds. It will be a cooler feeling day in the northeast, especially along the coast. Also rather cloudy, with limited bright or sunny spells. A few showers are possible, but mainly dry. A similar story as we head north to southern Scotland. Also rather cloudy here, with a few bright or sunny spells. Mostly dry, but an isolated shower is possible. There will be more in the way of sunny spells as we move to Northern Ireland, where it will be mostly dry, although an isolated shower is also possible here. Showers tending to ease through the evening, with clear spells developing for many areas. Winds remaining mostly light. That's how the weather's shaping up for the rest of the day.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinion with prominent guests saying the unsayable, and a little bit of weekend fun thrown in. Unlike other broadcasters, I won't be forgetting what the B in our name stands for. So Howie in for Real Britain Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m.
I'm Darren McCaffrey, and join me on The Briefing Monday to Thursday at 3 p.m. You'll get your afternoon fix of all the latest political stories, debate and analysis, as well as interviews with some of the biggest names in UK politics.
It's a problem that affects the whole world, Darren.
From Westminster to Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast, if it's happening in UK politics, we've got it covered. That's The Briefing with me, Darren McCaffrey, Monday to Thursday, 3 p.m. on GB News.
Join us for a special GB News event.
The celebration of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
From pageantry here at the Palace
to the parties in your street.
We'll bring you 4 days of
unforgettable moments
this bank holiday weekend.
Join us live up and down the country as we share your memories
of Her Majesty's extraordinary reign.
Send us your stories, photographs and videos
at jubilee@gbnews.uk.
Come and celebrate with us
on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell